Justice delayed is justice denied. But is the current court backlog causing people, innocent people, to plead guilty? Well, apparently yes. And that's coming from two of the watchdogs. First of all, Charles Taylor, he's the Chief Inspector of Prisons in England and Wales. And he's saying that it's about 17,000 people on remand at the moment. But some of them now waiting up to 5 years for their cases to come to trial. And similarly, Adrian Usher, he's the Prisons and Probation Service Ombudsman for England and Wales. And he says that they've been doing research into this, and inmates waiting lengthy periods of trial are changing their pleas to guilty after being advised it could mean they could leave jail immediately. So what's caused this? Well, currently, as I've said before, the prison backlog, the Crown Court backlog, is about 67, just coming up to 68,000. But it's anticipated that it will actually reach 100,000 unless things change. But part of the problem is, there's just no extra money there. So it's a thing of, I've mentioned before that, so many court buildings have been sold off or releases not renewed. So there's a massive shortage of court space, just to start with. I mean, there's quite an interesting thing. There's a thing on Twitter that monitors, which courts are operating on any given day. And even with the very few courts we have remaining, they're only operating at best at about 80% capacity. So on any given day, 1 in 5 available courtrooms just aren't being used because there's a shortage of judges. But more particularly, there's a shortage of barristers, both prosecution and defence. I mean, I've mentioned before that, when I do the advocacy training, I would ask the pupils especially, the very, just starting out in their careers, and say, what areas are you doing? And, it used to be, you'd probably get about half saying crime or family. And now in a group of 30 or 40 people, it'll be 1 or 2. It's just not sustainable. On the last course I did, I think there were about 40 people, 4 of whom were doing crime, but they were all CPS employees. They were barristers, but they were doing their pupillage through the CPS. So they're saying it's the only way they could do it because at least they had a regular income, a regular salary. Because if you do most criminal stuff, it's publicly funded legal aid. And the problem is you can't get paid until after the trial has completed. And then you put in a form, and then it takes them ages to sort of agree it and send it back. And they always knock you back and say, oh, you didn't need to do that much work, or we don't agree the page count. And this is even where you get the judge or the judge's clerk and say, can you just sign this form to say I was here every day and this is the amount of material? And the number of times that the legal services, I don't know what it's called this week, LSC, Legal Services Commission, Legal Aid Board, whatever, they're saying we don't accept you were there that day, there's no proof. And it's like, the judge has signed off on me, saying I'm in there. And people are getting really annoyed just with the way they're being treated. Some people are just going, you know what, I'll just go into private practice. I'll just do civil or something like that. Because, they're fed up of being treated like that. And obviously that has a huge knock-on effect. So even cases that are listed, people turn up to court and they're saying, well, I can't find anybody to defend me, or we can't find anybody to prosecute this. And you've had people, the court staff, there's a thing called a dog brief, actually, where they can just collar you and say, oh, are you free? I need you to get in there and prosecute or defend this case. So you're literally being told, here's the papers for a Crown Court trial. Have a quick read through them and get in there and then either prosecute or defend this case. And, no disrespect to my lovely colleagues at the bar who do work very hard. And, we are very good at assimilating information very quickly. But how good a job can you actually do when you've had literally no minute's notice that a trial is starting? It'll be like, okay, judge will see you, in 10 minutes, half an hour or whatever, just try and read through all that. And people are just finding it just impossible to do. But back to the prisoner thing, the remand population, it's risen 87% since 2019. And 1 in 5 people in prisons now are on remand. But when you're on remand, the way the prison service works, the remand prisoners tend to get put in the worst prisons because you don't know how long they're going to be there. There might be a bail application. So there's no settlement plan or anything. Once you're convicted, you're sent initially to what they call a dispersal prison. We'll just send you here, we'll categorise you, tell you, You can learn the ropes, we'll tell you what's expected, and we'll do an offender management plan through something called the OMU, the Offender Management Unit. And there's a system called OASIS, spelt with a Y, that assesses what you did, how high a risk you are, what's the best way of containing you in the prison, or ideally rehabilitating you. You know, do you need any psychiatric help? Do you need to go on any courses, you know, anger management, anything like that? You know, the Think First course, that was a popular one that we used to recommend people for. You know, so, may it please the court, the problem with my client is he just doesn't think before he acts. However, as it happens, there is a course called Think First, so perhaps you could recommend him for this. You know, so that's how it happens. And then you get put into, you know, the prison where you will theoretically serve the rest of your sentence. Now, depending on what category you are, you've got categories A through to D. You know, A being the most serious, D being, you know, the lowest risk. And it's all based on things like, you know, how dangerous are you in prison and what's your risk of escape? There is one category, which is, I think, is the worst one to have, which is can't be trusted, would try to escape, but doesn't have the intelligence or the wherewithal to actually organise a successful escape. It's like, oh, okay, I'd rather be cat A than that. But then you get put in sort of, you know, a relatively stable prison. Although we do have the old diesel therapy thing, where they will just move you around. I had something, I won't get into details, but I was trying to judicially review a decision in the prison from the Offender Management Unit. And the trouble is you have to bring the claim against the actual prison they're in. And every time we did the letter before claim, they would move the person. So we'd have to, you know, start again. And in the end, we just went, right, we'll just go straight for the Secretary of State for Justice then, and just let them know what's been going on. But that is part of the problem. But yeah, I mean, remand prisoners, though, they are just put in all the old Victorian horrible places. And, you know, the thing is, if you are serving up to, you know, if you're serving 4 or 5 years on remand, you're an unconvicted prisoner, well, that's the equivalent of an 8 to 10 year sentence. So realistically, you know, how long are you going to get if you actually plead guilty to it? And part of the problem is people are being advised and saying, look, obviously we know you're innocent, and it's got to be entirely up to you. But if you were to plead now, instigate plea, we'd probably get you into court in a couple, you know, next month or in a couple of months or something, and you put the guilty plea in, and the judge is probably going to give you time served. And, you know, that is a massive worry for people, especially at the bar, because, you know, the whole point is we are there to try to ensure justice is being done. And a lot of my prosecutor friends are equally worried about this. You know, they are concerned that people who may have a good defence, you know, are pleading when they don't have to. I mean, obviously, when it comes to prosecution, there's a bit of an asymmetry there. While defence barristers have to do everything that is lawful and proper to secure an acquittal for their client, prosecutors aren't under the same duty. There's a saying, the prosecution achieves no victories nor suffers any defeats. Because the idea is you are a minister of justice and you are just presenting the case. But the problem is, if there's a prima facie case there, you can't preempt that and say, you know what, I think if he puts his defence in, he or she, and the jury like them, they may well be acquitted. I mean, prosecutors can offer no evidence if they think, actually, this person, you know, there isn't a realistic prospect of conviction if the jury is properly directed, bearing in mind any defences they might raise. But you've seen this where there was the, you know, the insomnia case where, you know, there was a very, very serious SUL offence charged there, and the prosecution dropped it because they said, well, he's raised this defence, you know, that she sleepwalks, and it could have all happened, you know, in her sleep, and how was I to realise? And they got a lot of criticism for that. I mean, probably quite rightly so. But obviously, that leads to a reluctance to anticipate defences. So it's like, well, this person does have a really good defence, and come on, we'll stick this in front of a jury. A jury's probably going to acquit. And it's like, yeah, but I can't take the risk. I mean, you know, there is a prima facie case. Yes, you can run that defence, but let's see what the actual jury do. So even though there is a filter there and a mechanism for the prosecution not to continue with every case, because they're actually told they're under no duty to, you know, to secure a conviction in every case, even actually where there is the realistic prospect of conviction. They're quite often told, you know, it's got to be also in the public interest. So if you look at this, and in the round, yes, they probably did it, we could probably get a conviction, but in the grand scheme of things, is this a good use of public money? And is justice achieved by actually prosecuting this person? Especially when chances are they'll get a conditional discharge or an absolute discharge or something. But yeah, the pressure on for other offences. I mean, you've got to commit a really serious offence to be doing, to get an 8 to 10 year sentence. So for most people, after they've been on remand, like, a year or two, it's like, well, that's more than I could ever get for this offence. And remember, if you go to court, if you are on remand and you are subsequently acquitted, that's it. You don't, there's no compensation. There's no sort of, sorry, we banged you up for a few years, off you go, mate, boy, you're all innocent. And part of the problem then is, by that time, people have lost touch with their families, they've lost their jobs, they've probably lost their accommodation. So they're just dumped back onto the street with their resettlement grant, which is, I don't know how much it is now, but it's not a lot. It's in tens of pounds. And it's like, there you go. That's your taxi fare. We'll give you get your travel warrant so you can get a train anywhere, in the country. It's like, there's your train ticket to somewhere, and there's 30 or 40 pounds to start you off with and get you down the dole office. So, ironically, there's a lot of re-offending from actually acquitted people who've been on remand, because by that time they've lost all their connections with the outside world, and also they've just been in sort of, learning scams off all the other prisoners. So what are they supposed to do about that? It's a sad state of affairs, but what's our illustrious government doing about this? Well, a Ministry of Justice spokesperson said that the Labour government, quotes, inherited a criminal justice system in crisis with records court backlog, meaning people are spending far too long awaiting trial in dangerous and overcrowded prisons. They added, "We've also taken urgent action to save the prison system from the point of collapse. We have taken initial measures to address the remand population in our prisons, doubling magistrate sentencing powers to ease the pressure on our jails and deliver swifter justice for victims." But will that help? No, of course it won't. And nobody is, suggesting it will. I mean, at the moment, magistrates can only impose a sentence up to 6 months for one offence and up to 2 years for more than one offence. So they said, oh, well, we'll make it, they can actually impose sentences of up to 2 years. But how does that speed the backlog up? Because it does mean, yes, magistrates can accept more cases. They can say, yes, we can accept this case and it can be tried in the magistrates' court. But then the defendant has to elect whether they agree to be tried in the magistrates' court or whether they want a jury trial. And most people are going, no, I'd rather take my chances with a jury. Thank you very much. So it's difficult to see how that will have any impact. I mean, we're rather hoping with the new government that they would actually, fund things. Because, they've appointed a lot of sort of lawyers and people who actually have been at the coalface into, the government. Attorney General, he's brought lots of cases against the government, things like that. But our new Lord Chancellor / Secretary of State for Justice has just said, sorry, there is no more money, so you're not getting it. So it's difficult to see how this will be remedied. But yeah, when you get people like, the Chief Inspector of Prisons and the Prison Ombudsman saying this is a problem and that innocent people are now pleading guilty just to actually, not serve time that they otherwise wouldn't have to do, it's difficult to see how that is justice. Ooh, me getting a bit political. Oof, there you go. Anyway, as always, hope you found that vaguely interesting, vaguely informative, vaguely accurate, wildly infuriating, no doubt. And I will see you next time. And just practice. I'll do one on this side and one on this side, because I can never remember which side YouTube prefers to have your picture. I'll probably just ask Dan to do me a thumbnail. He's really good at this.